And we're live. I'm here with the one and only Bryan Lacey. Bryan, it has been far too long. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning. Nice to see you as well, Kate. It's been way too long. Way too long.
Way too long. But you've been mega busy as usual. I always see on Facebook that you're in various airports all around the world doing your MMA thing in all the far-flung corners of the globe.
Yeah, not always the nicest and the hottest spots, but some of the some most interesting places on the planet for sure.
I don't actually know how you're allowed into some parts of the world because your passport must have stamps from some really dodgy places.
I've only ever been stopped at border control once, and as in taken into a room and asked once, and that was in Russia, and they took me into a room and they kept flicking through my passport and they were going, "So you've been to this place? You've been to Tajikistan?" I was like, "Yeah." They went, "Why?" And I was like, "I'm fighting." They went, "You've been to Kazakhstan? Why?" "Fighting." Right? And then all of a sudden, he's looking at this big dude as well, big, scary Russian dude. And he's looking through my passport and he closes it and he just looks at me and goes, "Do you watch Game of Thrones?" And I was like, yeah, I watch Game of Thrones. He went, "Who's your favorite character?" I went, "Oh, Tyrion Lannister. Yeah, do you know the Small Prince?" And he went, my favorite too. And I was like, this is the weirdest. What's going on? And then all of a sudden he switched. He just went, "Are you MI5? And I was like, "No." And you went, "Okay, no problem." Off you go. That was it. That was it. Game of Thrones and Tyrion Lannister broke the ice, and then he tried to catch me off guard. But yeah, I'm here. I'm not in a prison, so that's good.
I wonder what would have happened if you didn't watch Game of Thrones.
I did think that, and I did because obviously everyone was watching it at the time. That was when it was, at its height. But I did think afterwards, what if I said no to that question? Could you imagine?
You could be rotting in a Russian prison
That's
somewhere.
right, somewhere deep down in the. Yeah, with lots of tattoos on my face by now, no doubt.
But I digress.
We digress. That's what we do. What are we here for? We do this every Sunday, by the way, guys. We just tune in, we have pancakes, and then we talk rubbish. It's one of my favourite times of the week.
We're here today to talk about one of your many commentary gigs, Oktagon MMA. I absolutely love this show. I think the production's amazing. Some of the venues they do it in are so cool. You've got such high level fighters on the show. Like, it really is fabulous. So I'm excited to hear more about it. But you've got a new show out for them on their YouTube channel. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so like you said, the events are already amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you look at the production level and you go, this is off the chart. It's up there with all the big shows. You look at the storytelling they do with the fighters and the profile the fighters have got. You look at some of the athletes on their cards. They might not have the best record, but they've got these huge followings. So I went over there and I kind of sat around. I was looking at this thing. I was like, this is as good, if not more exciting than any other show that I've ever watched, whether it's on TV or live cage side. And I was like, why don't we know about this thing? Why is it a case of that? And because we're mad on MMA, we watch combat sports. If there's something on, we'll switch it on and we'll be interested.
Yeah.
I thought, why don't I know about this show? And I kind of got talking to them. I ended up doing some commentary for them. And it feels to me like I've got this dirty secret. Like, I've got this amazing thing that I only want to show a few people. But this is the idea now, that the MMA Hype, the show that I'm doing, like a magazine show. For me, I'm hoping it's going to be like an introduction, like a gateway drug for people into Oktagon MMA, because the shows are great. The characters and the personalities they've got are ridiculous. You look at Carlos Vermola in his last fight. He used to train over at London Shoot Fighters, now trains back in the Czech Republic, and he is just like a crazy character. He's got his own TV show. He's got a place called Vermola Land, which has got tigers and alligators and sharks and lions that he all feeds by hand. And on top of that, he's one of the baddest fighters on the planet. And he came out in his last fight on a throne, carried into this Colosseum, like with a crown on, telling everybody to stand up, and the whole of Prague are on their feet. And it's a case of, like, right now, I think that everything they've got as far as a package for people who like MMA, it's there. It's just now getting it to them. So that's the idea of MMA hype, is kind of lifting the lid on the show, introducing you to some of the fighters, the personalities, and hopefully bit by bit, bleeding it into what we call the mainstream over here, because it's going to be in English rather than in Czechoslovakian. So that's
Yeah.
the plan.
And people definitely know some of the fighters on these cards as well
Oh
already.
yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt, and the ones. This is the other side of it as well. Like I did a second episode of Octagon Hype this week, and I broke down some of the champions. And even when I was researching it and doing it again, they are so good. You got Lozen Keita, who people might not know right now, but he's 9-0. He just fought Ivan Buchinger, who's 39-8 now after fighting Lozen Keita. He had 39 more fights than Lozen Keita, submitting everybody. He was their champ, 145-pound champion, 155-pound champion. And Lozen Keita is this kid that everyone thought would just crumble, like in front of somebody that big, in front of a crowd that was, I think it was 9,500 people in Frankfurt, the main event. And he battered him in 3.5 minutes. Lozen Keita just stepped out there, put it on him. And I was sat next to Frank Mir, and even after the show, Frank's great because he's not somebody that just switches off. He doesn't put the headset down. And then as soon as we got back to the hotel, he was straight up to Lozen Keita. And he was like, the moves he did, the footwork, the feints, and they were breaking it all down. And for me to see somebody who's been at that height of the world of MMA be that excited by somebody at the beginning of their journey, that said to me that we got somebody, a superstar, somebody very special. So even though there are names we know, what I'm excited about is introducing people to the names that they don't necessarily know, that I think that will be big names in the future.
And we've seen some awesome female fights on these cards as well.
Oh my God. So we had Connie Holm from Sweden fighting on the last card. And I think she's 2016, 2017 IMAF champion. Connie Future Holm. And she's honestly, and she's so, like, she's had a really rough year because she got injured. So she had a couple of fights cancelled, a bad knee injury as well, which is the worst to come back from. And she put an absolute clinic on this Brazilian lady who everybody thought was going to come over and, establish herself. We've had Lucia Pudilova as well. John Kavanagh walked out Lucia Pudilova. So she's from the Czech Republic, but now trains at SPG Island. And it was, I was sat in the arena. It was in Ostrava. 20,000 people at the O2.
That was mental. I actually remember that walkout. That was insane. That you would never have known where you were or what event that was, would you? Like, it was absolutely crazy.
Well, my thing was because John. First of all, I know John a little bit, so we kind of recognize each other. We say hello, but I don't know him very well. But we've been around the shows. But I was sat in the commentary bit here, and he was cornering Lucia Pudilova up here, and he walked around. Stood on the ring apron and held the banner over as they're getting ready to announce. And I watched him just looking around like this. And then he spotted me and he just went, and I was like, yeah, wow. And then we spoke afterwards.
It must be quite hard to impress the guy that's cornered Connor for his fights, So if he's impressed by the atmosphere, I want people to know that this is the kind of impression levels that you're going to surpass.
Well, he apologized. He came up to Andre Novotny and Pavel Neruda, who are the owners, and he apologized. He went, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea you guys were doing this." And that's my thing. I said it to him as well. I said, I stumbled upon Oktagon when I'd seen it sort of pop up on my feed, and I'd seen these shows, and you kind of think, oh, it looks pretty big and it looks good, the production. And then I watched Oktagon 15, which was Attila Vey versus Carlos Famola. And that was in front of 20,000 people. That was the first time they sold out the O2 Arena. 20,000 people, the headline fight. And I watched this walkout and I was like, that's whatever they're doing, I have to have something to do with it. So after that, I think it was as we got into lockdown and they were still doing some more fights, I sent them a message and introduced myself, and then we got talking, and eventually I came over to do the shows. But watching it on the screen was one thing, but then being sat in the arena. So in the last 3 shows, I've been at the O2 in Prague, which was 20,000 people for the stand-up fights there. They're like a boxing and Muay Thai sort of style set of fights in the ring. 20,000 people. Then we went to Frankfurt. First time they ever went to Frankfurt, and they outsold the UFC in Germany. They outsold the UFC in Germany. The first time Frankfurt has ever had an MMA event. Nearly 10,000 people in the Festhalle in Frankfurt. Then we went to the Stvanica, which is the open air arena, their smallest event, but like I call it their Super Bowl, like their Monaco or their Wimbledon, because of the venue more than anything. That was
How
seven and
was
a
it?
half.
How was it being in that stadium?
Oh my. So I did one last year, and this was just after COVID, and it was as they were starting to introduce English commentary and things like that. And I remember just being there, and it's a festival atmosphere. It is like it's really strange because it's more than the event, and especially off the back of COVID last year, it was the first time they were able to come back and they were able to, do this show that there was a signature or a staple in every calendar year. They came back and Andre did this speech, and it was in Czech, but they highlighted some of the people in the crowds, and I started to see everybody like you look around, people are starting to cry in this. It's like an MMA crowd. You got grown men and women started to cry in this thing, and I had no idea what he was saying at that time, but I just started to feel the emotions of this venue and this moment. And then last year they kind of joked, well, next year we're going to be the Super Bowl. We want to do this halftime show. So this year they did. They put a band on right in the middle of it. A brilliant, I've forgotten his name. Brilliant band and a great singer came on, and they did like a music show, like in the middle of the. And I was like, how's it going to work? Like, how are we going to stop from fights, end of the prelims, and now we go up to somebody playing Coldplay, and it's like, what we're supposed to be having a fight here? I don't want some piano instrumental
Janet
breakdown.
Jackson gets her boob out.
But it worked. Like everybody, there was suddenly a Mexican wave started going around. They had these wristbands which they paid for everybody to have, which had its own lighting operator and was all synced with the music. So when you watch the event at the halftime show, they're cutting the music in with the wristbands. And I was looking around, and nobody left their seats. Usually, when there's a break interval, everyone runs to the bar and it kind of empties.
Yeah,
it was packed, and it was this crazy atmosphere. And again, it's just one of these. And whenever I speak to people, I say they do it differently. They're still putting on fights, but they do it differently, and that you feel it from the crowd, because you look around the crowd, and it's they still have their patches where they've got people supporting certain fighters or whatever else. But there's husbands and wives together there. There's boyfriends and girlfriends. I had one where we were at the press conference, and this press conference was in Ostrava, and they sold tickets for it, and they sold 2,000 seats
for the press conference.
For the press conference, right?
Wow.
And I said, why would you charge people for a press conference? And they said, because if we didn't charge or we didn't give them tickets, we would have like four to 6,000 people would turn up. So we give tickets because they've got to make sure that that's the allocated. So I went and sat at the back, and again, I didn't understand everything that was going on. I understood the presentation, and they described to me what the plan was with the press conference. But I sat right at the back, the very back row of this arena, like a theatre style, and a whole family came up and sat in front of me. And I'm talking 2 grandchildren, the husband and wife, the mum and dad, and then the grandparents, the grandma and granddad. And they sat at the back, and I was typing up my notes, and I was getting ready for the show the next day. And each of them, even the kids, had their own favorite fighter, or they all tuned in, or they all started cheering for different. And it was, I watched watched this whole set, and I was like, we don't get. I would definitely take my daughter to some of the fights that I go to, as in some of the shows, but there's some that I wouldn't. Some that I wouldn't. And when I looked at this, and when I was at the weigh-ins, and I was sat with the guy who's the sort of the head of the German side of it. And they've got real issues because the perception in Germany is different than it is. Like, we accept it in the UK. We love fighting. We have it. It's part of our mainstream. But in Germany, they've got the athletes, they've got the fighters, but the mainstream perception is still very, it's a dark sport. So this guy was like, we were stood at the weigh-ins, and he was looking around, and again there was people with prams, and there was husbands. There's still the sets of lads over there, but there was like a real mix, like maybe 65, 70%, 35% ladies, 40% ladies, 60% men, or something like that. So a real diverse mix of different people, different ages. And he was looking around because he was trying to get the weigh-ins in Germany in a mall, like in front of people, and they wouldn't allow it. And he said, I wish I could show them this. I wish I could show them the different faces. So they just do things differently. And when you feel the atmosphere, especially in a show like the last one, it's spine tingling. It really is spine tingling. It's what I want to share with people, because
Yeah.
their plans are to come here. They're going to come to the UK, and
Oh
they're
my
going to
God,
try.
I can't wait.
They're going to try and get some fighters that they can tell stories with. They're going. That's the aim, that they can build these stars. But then when I think about the shows we've got over here, and because they're different, these events, I think it's got a gap. I think we've got a space where
Yeah.
we can engage people properly, and make the events more than just turning up and watching fights, but like that festival feel. Like people want to come and bring, everybody.
Do you think it's because until you got involved, it was non-English speaking, that's why we don't know much about it here? Or is it because we don't know the fighters or some of the fighters yet? Why do you think that they're able to pack out a stadium with 20,000 people in the
Well,
Czech Republic, and people here still don't know about it? It's only a stone's throw away, isn't it?
it's 2 hours on a plane. It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's 2 hours on the plane, and it's like, and again, I've been there now like a year and maybe 4 or 5 months or something. But what they did was they nurtured the market, similar like KSW did in Poland.
yeah,
They kind of looked after their fans, their people. But what they do differently, and again, this is why Germany worked, is they tell the stories of the fighters. So
yeah,
every time when they launched in 2016, I think it was, they do a reality TV show. Similar to the Ultimate Fighter, as in fighters living in a house fighting for a contract, two teams. They would always do it Czech versus Slovakia. So you've already got that instant dynamic of neighbouring
yeah.
countries. They're very different to us, though. They actually get on really well. Whereas if you just put England versus any country around us, there'd be hate from the start. But they do this thing, and this is one of the bits I spotted when I was doing my first bit of commentary for them. I always do my research, and they send me over the fight cards, and I looked at it, and there was one fight really high up on the fight card, and it was a guy who was 9-12, 9 wins, 12 losses against somebody. I think it was 8 wins, 9 losses. So negative records,
Yeah.
or records when you look at them, you go, okay, maybe a filler fight. But it was like way up there, maybe second or third from the top. And I was like, well, that's strange. And then I watched these fighters walk out, and they were heroes. Like really, like the crowd went, and for both of them, the noise was just, they were like personalities. They were people they knew, and they'd been contestants on these shows. And through that, what you get is the storytelling. So you
Yeah.
get that, you find out about their background, you find out about their struggles, you find out about family life, you find out about things that they've been through, or anything like that. And for
Yeah.
me, it's the key, right? We love fight when you interview fighters and you hit that. And sometimes we've done it, both of us have done it, where we interview somebody and you stumble on something you didn't know,
Yeah.
but changes your perspective totally about who they are. And
Yeah.
then you feel for them, like you'll tune in for wherever they're fighting, or you'll keep your eye, or you'll send them a message.
100%.
It's the key. It's what
Yeah.
got me into fighting. I love watching the fights, but if I
Yeah.
just turned up every time and watched the red corner versus blue corner, it wouldn't mean the same. And it's the same for me as a commentator. My job, especially when I'm working for these promotions that some people maybe don't know so well, my responsibility is, before they touch gloves, from the moment they walk out to when they touch gloves, I need to tell you something about them. I need
Yeah.
to give you an angle on them, whether it makes you. So when you start watching, you go, hang on a minute, I want that guy to win, or I want that girl to win, or
Yeah.
I really want this to be a good contest. So
That's
for me,
literally what I do in my interviews. I'm not
yeah,
somebody who does technical breakdowns, or,
no,
there's so many people out there that do a much better job of analysis and stuff. So I don't go near that. I just try and bring out that person's story. And for me, I love people who aren't just about fighting, people who are totally different. And like you were saying about the fans at that press conference, I like to show people fighters aren't all,
yeah.
look like they're an extra in Prison Break with like tattoos everywhere. You just get such a diverse kind of bunch of people. You get people who decorate cakes for a hobby outside of fighting, and get Corey McKenna who eats her Haribos and wears a Alice band when she's not fighting, and it's up to us to kind of sell that to the public.
A massive reason about why I do what I do, and it was kind of, I accidentally fell on it, was again what you said at the start. So I was a comedian that was into fighting, so I started a podcast. But I'm not a journalist. So what I would end up doing is I'd find something on their social media, or I'd look and I'd watch some other interviews and something that maybe someone hadn't dug into that I
Yeah.
could turn. And it would never be about, it would never be the same questions. I'd never be asking, how's your weight cut? How many kilos to go? How was your camp? Who did you train with? All this stuff. I'd always try and find them. And doing that, you unlock them. Because if they
Yeah.
start talking about something that they weren't expecting to, which was always my kind of trick, that was my hook. My best one ever was Brad Pickett, who's now my best mate, and we hang out. We've flown all around the world. He messages me on a daily basis with some absolutely obscene material. But again, I first interviewed him. I just started doing this podcast, and I started to get people message me for, like, managers said, "Do you want to interview a fighter?" And I was like, "Really?" Because I was just interviewing comedians or people that like the sport. And then I dared to send a message to one of my favorite fighters, which is Brad Pickett. And I said, "Any chance I could interview you?" And straight away, straight back, yeah. So I researched it, and I looked at his stag do. I looked at all of his stuff that went on before he was fighting. And when I interviewed him, I jumped into that, and he was supposed to be like 15-minute interview. He was sat in Mike Brown's house with Mike Brown waiting to drive him to training, and he kept telling Mike to wait, not to go, because he wanted to carry on talking. And I remember afterwards, because it wasn't just about his fight or just about the violent side of mixed martial arts, because it was about him as a martial artist, as a person. His wife sent me a message, Sarah, and she sent it afterwards, and she said, he's been fighting since he was 26, and that's the first interview I've ever heard where he sounds like him. And she said that
Wow.
was awesome, and I was like, that's the best compliment
Yeah,
I
it
could
is
get.
huge compliment.
Yeah, and he loved it too. So that's how I got roped into that Whip to Warrior stuff, because I'd interviewed him a couple of times, and then he was doing that, and then he sent me a message, because we were kind of not quite on those terms, but I think the fact that he sent me a message kind of was a good sign. He said, "Yeah, if you're talking about fighting, come and have a fight." And I was like, "Oh my god, what?"
Can't really say
What?
no to him, can you?
No, exactly. But that's the key, and the same with the way that Oktagon do their shows. They don't just do it with the single promos just before you fight. They do a whole series of build up stuff. Again, it's just free on YouTube that you can watch. It's all translated, and it will move into English shortly. But it's the way they tell the stories. They will do as much as they can to peel that onion back as far as they can, so that the fans know the people as best they can before they step out there. And what that does is it gives these fighters, and it should always be about the fighters, not just the great arena to walk into. But you got these fan bases. Then you got people
Yeah.
that want to engage with it, want to support you, and when you get that, you get more sponsors, and when you get that, you get more opportunities. So for me, when they said to me, Octagon, at the end of like 2 or 3 shows in, they said, "Right, let's sit down. What can we do differently?" And I said, "You're doing it differently. You should
Yeah.
stay with this format. Keep with the reality TV show. Make that the base of everything that you do. The way you build a fan base, or you sort of integrate into a territory, and then just keep telling the stories." And that is, I think, why they're so big, and I think why they will be huge across Europe if the plans go as they say they will.
It's really exciting. I only came across it by chance. I think obviously I follow you on social media, so you would have been posting about it. And then I know they had Jonas Magard, I'm sure, was on one of the shows, and
Yeah,
I've followed him for years. Olga Rubin, who's now fighting on Invicta, she was on the Octagon shows, and
yeah,
so people that I already knew have pulled me in. And then, like you said, I was absolutely flabbergasted at the venues they were in, and the production and everything was just absolutely immense. So I
yeah.
really, really highly recommend people to watch the next show. It's it's oh, I'm really, really, I always get excited for new promotions, um and especially a lot of the European promotions out there are good, but this production I just think is on a different level. The next show, Octagon 35, I think is on the 17th of September, and people will know
Correct.
that Alex Lahore, who's headlining that,
Yeah.
um, middleweight championship fight. Tell us about that one. That's back in Prague, right?
So no, that's Brno, which is it's about an hour and a half south of Prague. So Brno
Okay.
became like their fight island. It's not as glamorous as Abu Dhabi, I'm going to say that, but it's a nice place. But they basically during lockdown they got this this hotel which they had as theirs, and it's got a great little venue, like a nice theatre style venue, which they did the events in to start with no crowd, and then slowly built it up bit by bit. But so it's got a special place, Brno, because over lockdown um, their numbers went up because they kept putting out shows. They did things like this on Oktagon Underground, which was modified MMA rules, so it's more towards stand up. And they put these fights on with some of the best Muay Thai kickboxers going into a cage fighting with small gloves. And then they were able to continue doing their events because this place was able to lock them down and agree to let them do these shows. So now they're returning September 17th, and it's kind of like it's like a thank you to that city because they're doing it in the biggest venue there. I think it's 12 and a half, maybe 13,000 people could be in that venue, which is massive, huge.
Yeah.
And they've brought a title fight, which is Patrick Kinsell, which is one of the most famous, best Czech fighters. He's traveled the world, fought for ACB, KSW, all sorts of big promotions. And he's taken on Alex Ahore. Now, Kinsell won the belt back in December last year, and this will be his first title defense. Alex Ahore has fought a number of times since then, and he was welterweight. He's a badass, Alex Ahore, as well, because I have no idea who he trains with. I honestly could not tell you a single person that he is sparring with or being coached by or, you know, preparing for this fight with. He's kind of like, he's an enigma because he floats around, and he, even despite lack of maybe a big team, his fighting style is so good. His
Yeah.
hands are amazing. His wrestling, like he fought a guy called I'm trying to remember, it's Tito Primera for Oktagon. This was last year, and Tato is a superb like close quarters fighter, good in the clinch, really good at takedowns, really good at top control, cardio for days. And I thought that was going to be the fight. I thought he would take him down, and if he can get him to the ground, Lahore would be in trouble. Lahore's defensive wrestling, and then his striking on the break, and then he's got his grit in the clinch. It was phenomenal. He then moved up to middleweight. He's now, I think he's on a 2-fight win streak at middleweight.
Now, I've not seen him fight at middleweight.
So he's fought Carlos Vermola. He fought for the title before at middleweight of a fight. It took him 5 rounds as well. Everybody Vermola fights kind of breaks, or you know, at some point wants to give something up to get out, just because of his style, his smothering style. Lahore took him all 5 rounds and was still coming by that 5th round. Now he's earned his shot back against Patrick Kinsell, and they've been starting to go at each other on social media. They're not like the most what do you call it? They don't talk smack really. They don't do that sort of stuff. But on this, they've kind of been like, Lahore posted the picture of Patrick Kinsell's head and just went, "I'm not going to miss that." It's like just, and then Kinsell was like, "I'll finish you in 2 rounds." Then Lahore, it's like a kid's fight. "Well, I'll finish you in 1." And this is it. So they just started going at each other. But it's a title that's important because the middleweight division is really like one of their fullest as far as the roster. So there's a lot of bodies trying to work their way towards this. Carlos Vermola, who just won the light heavyweight title, is now saying he's going to come down to get the middleweight title as well. So the ramifications are it'll be a huge fight. Like that is your red panty night fighting Carlos Vermola in the Czech Republic or anywhere in the world.
Wow.
So the ramifications off the back of this are a face-off with the biggest star in Oktagon. So huge fight.
Amazing. And then the one after that is in Frankfurt. Oktagon 36 in October is in Frankfurt again.
Yeah, mad. So Frankfurt, we're going back there again. They sold out the Festhalle in Frankfurt, which is this iconic venue, loads of history in this building, and it's beautiful. When they set it up and they put the cage in there and the lights, they showed us the pre-production lights sort of set up. Just everybody kind of took a big deep breath, and it was weird because they did the reality show over in Germany as well. So they went over there. They did this Oktagon challenge where they do these fights, but they also do these crazy challenges. And again, that's another angle that they use for getting people to know the person, because alongside the reality show, the normal stuff of working your way towards the contract through the fights, you have to do these crazy challenges. So the fighters would be asked to work in like a high-end restaurant, or they'd have to do like a Bear Grylls style challenge outside. They flew me over to teach the coaches. I had 1 hour, and in fact, I ended up getting two
Stand
German
up.
comics stand up. So they had what like the two sets of coaches. So you had the Zavada brothers taking on Christian Eklund and Stefan Putz, two opposing
Were they doing
teams.
stand up in English?
So no, they did it in German. So this is why I
Oh
got
my!
my two. I got
How do you teach that?
well, I kind of tricked it because I got two mates over there that are very good comics. So that's one of the other blessings of doing the comedy for so long. I've got friends in different places, so I brought them in, and I said to them, "We're going to teach. They don't know what they're doing yet." We were in the red light district in Frankfurt, in a place called Peak Dam, which is the oldest sort of cabaret bar that you get in Frankfurt, and I said to the comedians, I said, we've got an hour to teach them 5 minutes, how to write 5 minutes of material. And both the comics went, no, it's not good. No
Oh
way.
my
It can't be. It's almost impossible because it was 10 in the morning. So it's morning. We're in a venue which isn't a proper comedy club. So like the setup, we actually turned it into something that looked pretty good. But then we did the challenge, and the fighters to start with were like, no, we can't do it. No. And then as the hour ticked on, they started to get more into it. And then they went out there and they did it in front of a crowd. Like there was about 30, 40 people in this audience. We went up and they smashed it. Every single
Wow.
one of them. There's not a bit where everybody kind of went, what the hell? But through that, you get to know about the people again, because you're not seeing them being violent or, just
Yeah.
aggressive. They're in panic mode. They're out of their comfort zones. So we did that, which helped sell out the Frankfurt Festival last time. But the final week, they'd still had about 3,500 tickets to shift. So they'd still sold a lot. So if you were to say that's our first go, 6,000 tickets. That's still very impressive. The
Yeah.
final week, boom, all the tickets went, and not just given
Wow.
away, sold. They sat each morning, we'd sit at breakfast, and they'd click the thing on and show me, and they'd show different sections. As soon as that event had finished and they announced the next one, I think they'd sold by 10 days out of the promo being dropped, 5,000 seats for the next event without an actual fight being announced. So we're returning to Frankfurt. We're returning to the Festhalle. It's got Christian Eklund versus De Oliveira. Now, Eklund is the biggest star in Frankfurt. He's a guy who's well known over in that area. When we sat and he did his walkout, when we sat commentating, before his music even started, every fan were on their feet. Like I did a video from the back because we weren't cage side that time because the German commentary team where we were up in the studio. And when he started to walk out, everyone stood up, and not just a few. 9,000 people got on their feet, and the walkout was spectacular. But the fight was controversial because it's now been rescinded. He won the fight, but it's been rescinded because the German commission took the win away because there was a blow which he said went to the groin, which when you look back, it looks like a liver shot. So you look back. So there's this now rematch going on.
Oh wow!
The Oliveira, who took the fight on 9 days' notice last time, and he came in, and everybody thought tough Brazilian, but against Eklund in his hometown, this is going to be a one-way. But the guy was amazing, and he lost the fight eventually, but it's been rescinded to a no contest, and it's going to be a rematch with everything to play for, back on the same stage on Oktagon 36.
Bryan, I need to get out to one of these and do some post-fight interviews.
You would love it. You would love it.
Do you think there's enough English speakers there to do some post-fight interviews?
Do you know what? The other great thing, and it's another thing I've learned from traveling the world, luckily, over the last 7 years or whatever it's been bouncing around, is the rest of the planet are so good at learning languages. Oh, my God. Like, I've been to Russia, Brazil, all around Europe, and everywhere I've been, not knowing the language has not been a problem because everybody knows English plus maybe one or two other languages, and it's the same out there. It is the language of business out there. It's a common, like everybody speaks.
So if I had to pick one place for my first show to go in and try and get some credentials for, which one would you recommend?
So there's a big show, and again, this is end of the year stuff. They're doing 20,000 people. This is Oktagon 38. They call it the circus. It's like the end of the year spectacle. So you'll also get to see the sort of production they put on for something like that. Last year they had, and again, we were in they put restrictions back in, so we were back in Brno, but they still had people spinning off the roof, fire eaters, jugglers, all this stuff going on around the show while we had the fights
That's
going
the
on.
one I want to go to.
But this is now
When's
going to
that?
be this December 30th. It's
It's
going to
my
be.
birthday too.
There you go. Double
Happy birthday to
celebration.
me.
Let's see how many drunk interviews we can get before the end of the year, before 2023 hits. But that would, for me, be like the spectacle one to come and see.
And
But
is that in
honestly,
Prague?
that will be in Ostrava. So that's a city just to the side of Prague, about an hour and a half away. But honestly, you could pick any, and you would go there, and you would kind of In fact, the litmus test I would say, especially for you, is if you speak to or interview any fighters. This is me talking to you now about my experience, but speak to the fighters, because ask Jonas Magard about what it's like to walk out in front of 15,000 people in his debut. Then
Yeah.
he boxed a guy called Sivak, who's he is one of the baddest strikers on the planet. He walked out and boxed him in front of 20,000 people in the O2 Arena. Ask Olga Rubin what it's like, what the atmosphere and what the fans are like. Ask Corey Tate when you went out there what it was like to open the show in Frankfurt, because when usually you open a show, it's like half the seats full, right? You get a few packed arena for the first fight of the show. So, any of them, and hopefully it'll be a little bit easier next year, because we're looking at bringing Oktagon to the UK, to Ireland, and seeing what we can do over here as well.
Well, we all know what an Irish crowd's like. That would be incredible, I'm sure. Danny says, "Morning, guys. Bryan, how do you cope with all the different pronunciations? You are the master at this, Bryan. It's unbelievable. You as a commentator, Ricky Wright as an MC, I'm
Yeah.
always blown away, especially with the Russian ones.
Yeah, the great thing is you don't know what the correct pronunciation is either. So as long as I say
So
it
you
with
can say
confidence, yeah,
confidently.
exactly. No, but genuinely, you kind of get like with different and I don't speak the languages, but you kind of learn how the alphabets go together. So and all I do is break it down phonetically, and then I put it in my head beforehand. But again, it's prep. It's just doing the stuff that people don't see. I don't just turn up and stick a fight card on and do that. I spend hours for every fight card, whether it's a small show in the UK or whether it's
You even for Winter Warrior as a commentator called us all and found
yeah,
out about
yeah.
us. So
Do you know what I've got to say as well? And I don't know if you remember this phone call as well as I do, but I was driving up to a gig, so I did it while I was on the road, and I was doing it. And what I do is I speak to people, and then I record either the conversations or I record notes for afterwards. You were such like your energy and your enthusiasm, and like straight away. And again, that's the thing. So I had so much to talk about with you. I had so much, and it's because like we had that conversation, and I could have just turned up and called. I could have called Katie's fight at Winter Warrior, and I would have called it, and I would have broken it down. But the fact I can insert your personality, and the fact that, because honestly, I had such a smile on my face after our chat, because just because of the energy you had. And then I felt like you told me all the thing, like what you're into, why you're doing this, the fact you had literally moved away from it's now your husband, and you literally moved away from him for 6 months. But I'm off to have a fight, and like left him for 6. So he's the hero.
over the weekends.
I think I'm home at the weekends, but all that goes into it, right? That's when I tell people about whether, and again, it matters to me. I genuinely care about that. I sit next to some people, and I've seen it before, where you turn up at shows and they don't do anything, and
some people get like the production people will do the kind of basic notes for you, the fighters' records and like certain things about what they specialize in and stuff like that. And
it's not the people, right? It's not the people.
Exactly. Yeah. When you see how much goes into, and it takes like days, right? That kind of research of, well, part of it is watching their fights, obviously, which takes time. But the other part is what you said, diving into their social media, speaking to them, like finding something different that
Yeah,
hasn't been said about them 100 times before.
absolutely. And then even just stuff like at the hotel, because for me, like I'm on as soon as I get there. Whether and I've done it before where I'll speak to people in a taxi, and I never do it as an interview. I talk to them. And
Yeah,
again, if I was to say to you, right, from 9 to 11 o'clock, I'm going to be doing interviews. Come sit down, and I'll talk to you. It's and sit across the table. The dynamic changes from if I'm
exactly.
just sat having food and I chat to you, or in a taxi. And I've found out so many bits that people probably wouldn't have told me, or I wouldn't have found out
Yeah,
if it had been a standard. So for me, and it's not. I don't do it in a sneaky way. And I'm not looking. I don't dig for dirt. I dig for gold. I dig for like the bits
yeah.
that I can share with people that I hope that will get them invested in them as a fighter, or at least get them to understand them as a person as well.
But what I want to know is, because I'm terrible for, once I do find this stuff, I get too invested, too attached to these people.
Yeah,
And then I don't know how you commentate in a way that's unbiased when I'm, and the more people I know and the more people I get invested in, then they start fighting each other, and I'm like, I can't bear for anyone to lose this. I really can't. And
yeah,
and I don't enjoy MMA as much as I used to, because I know some people so well now,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I know for some people it's their last chance, or I know that they really, 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 really need this win money for their family, or I know that they're this close to the next step of their career, or if they don't get a win tonight, they're probably going to hang it up.
mm,
Like, I'm a nervous wreck.
yeah,
How do you
yeah.
call a fight when you know all this about everyone?
Oh, do you know what? And it is one of the hardest bits because you do get invested, you do care, you do call their fight. So that one of the toughest bits is getting on the bus on the way back after the event. So, and this is the other thing that's kind of always been a bit strange for me because I sit on the bus and straight away I hear my own voice, whether it's at the back of the bus because people are watching the replays and there's people that have had big wins, and so there's all the energy, different energies and
Yeah,
emotions going on in this and that one thing. And first of all, I was like really nervous about how I sort of deal with that. But again, it's just I care about the people. I do care about what happens, and physically as well as mentally to them. So again, I don't try. It's that horrible thing. Like if you say there's something wrong and people are all around you, like oh there's something wrong. I just try and be as talk to them as normally as I would.
yeah,
I message some of them afterwards. But again, yeah, it is something you kind of have to accept with the sport, and it is the best and the worst sport in the world
yeah,
because the highs are so high and the lows are so low, and they're they are literally fighting for their dreams. No one steps in there, or very few people would step in there just to make a quick paycheck. There's stuff
yeah.
that's gone into it that
There's
people would
easier ways.
never. There are easier ways. There are easier ways. You said that very quick, Katie, which is worrying. That's, but so for me, it's something that you kind of you get to accept. And when I'm calling the fights, and it's somebody I know, because I've called fights with
Oh,
people that
and
I
you've called fights for, like, close friends of yours
really,
as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
like,
absolutely,
and
big fights,
you're
headline,
so impartial as well.
yeah.
Like, I was blown away. I think ACB, when you and Brad were commentate, actually talking about pronunciations, please go back and find, everyone, Bryan Lacey posting Brad trying to pronounce some Russian names
Oh,
and
so
Bryan trying to teach him. Oh
oh,
my God,
it's,
that is absolute comedy gold.
but the best bit about that isn't spoiler alert. So there's names on there like Gajimura Ustamagomedov, Azerbaijan Baki Januli, things like this. So they're all like big, long, and they look ridiculous. There's letters going beside it. You go, how do you say them together? So I was trying to get him to do all these ones. Gajimurad Hiromagomedov, things like this, and he'd all over. Then there was one, oh, what's his name? Oh, yeah, that was it. So I gave him those ones, and then I gave him one, which was a simple one, Edward Vartanyan. Edward Vartanyan. He was going, Eduardo Vartanyan. I said, Edward Vartanyan. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, he's just gold anyway. That man is gold anyway.
Yeah, but seeing the pair of you commentate on a friend who lost, and was really on the cusp of something big, I was blown away at your impartiality when you were
Yeah.
on the comms, at least. Like, for me, I feel really guilty afterwards interviewing the winner
Yeah,
if
it's
they've
hard.
just beaten my friend.
Smashed your
I'm
mate.
just like,
Yeah, yeah,
oh, maybe I'll
yeah.
pretend that I couldn't get hold of them. But then I'm like,
Um,
it's that person's moment too. So you do deserve an interview, but I just think that I've sold the story to myself at this point. So
I
I'm
know.
so invested that I
Yeah.
just then, it's over the top.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I have been honest sometimes as well, but I am honest about the relationship I've got with some fighters. So if I've spent a lot of time, so I'll always lay that out. But then
Yeah.
I'm always extra careful that I do both sides, because I've heard fights where the two commentators know one guy and it's all that way.
It
And
must be
then
so easy to, not even to be trying to be biased, but you just know so much about that person that
yeah,
it's easy to
yeah.
just talk about them for days.
Yeah, and also you know who's watching. Like I know their wife's watching. I know their mum's watching. I know this. So but at the same time, I also like totally respect the other guy that's getting
Yeah.
in there. I totally have to understand, and I'll do as much as I can to know as much. Like, and again, there's been awkward moments where I've been stood in the lift with two guys, and I'm like, these guys are fighting in like 4 hours time. It's like, how you doing? Fist bump. Let's go. Okay.
Not
But
yet,
yeah,
though. Let's
no,
not go
yeah,
yet.
yeah. Spin yourself at all times. Go. We've got till the 8th floor. Let's settle this.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's
Kev McConnell says Brad said he doesn't like you. He says he just feels sorry for you as you stalk him.
yeah,
That could be directed at either of us, to be
yeah,
fair.
yeah. I'm not knocking that. Also, Brad Pickett does some of the best barbecues on the planet, so I'm really only invested in him for the coattails and the meat-based products. Love you, Kev. By the way, looking good, my son.
Yeah, shout out to Kev. Bryan, is there anything else that we need to know about Oktagon before I let you go and make pancakes for your daughter?
It's done. The pancakes are done,
Oh,
mate.
you've
I've
done
smashed
them.
it. The whole family has had pancakes with different toppings on. I do it every Sunday, so it's all
Oh,
done and dusted. But with Octagon Hype is one of the programs that I'm doing. So it's the magazine show. Like I said, it's just like an introduction to Octagon. You get a
on their
taste of the
YouTube
events.
channel. The first one's up already.
Yeah, Octagon Hype 1 is out now, which is on the Octagon UK and Ireland YouTube channel. And I've just filmed Octagon Hype 2. We break down some of the champions. So we look at Lozen Keita. We talked to Frank Mir because he called the fight of Lozen Keita when he got crowned as champion. Frank Mir was also driven around on his seminar tour by a young, cheeky Danish guy called Jonas Magard. And now Jonas is the 135-pound champ. So we talked to Frank about Jonas, and we also talked to Jonas Magard about what's next and when his next title defense will be. So, and on top of that, there's just an introduction to some nice stories and fighters, and you get a little taste. You get the clips. It's one of these shows where I'm allowed to use the footage. So it's a show where it's not just me chatting shite. It's actually me putting out there on a big plate for you to all enjoy what Oktagon MMA is. So Oktagon Hype will come every 2 weeks, and then on top of that, I'll be doing a thing called the MMA Pulse, which is just me either chatting to Oktagon fans and breaking down some fights, or I'll talk to people in and around the world of mixed martial arts as well. So that's what's up.
I'm really excited to start watching that and to kind of meet the fighters that I don't already know. I've got to get out to one of Jonas's title defenses for sure. Everyone would have seen him last night on Cage Warriors. He was cornering Aaron Abbey. So you will know him. Look him up. He's fought for a ton of different promotions, and now he's the bantamweight champ at Oktagon. So. I'm really, really excited. This is a whole heap of new fighters for me to get really invested in and cry my eyes out when they lose and
I love
sing
it.
from
I
the
love it.
chandeliers when they win.
I love it because you gave up your husband for 6 months to train for a fight. Now we're giving you so many fighters. Your husband probably never just comes through that little white door behind you with a cup of tea and a biscuit. Hi, this is me. Yeah, the married man. Shout out to your husband, Katie Hunter.
Well, Bryan, thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about that.
Thanks for
I'm
having me.
really, really excited. So the next show, Octagon 35, 17th of September, people can watch that live on pay-per-view if they can't go,
Yeah,
right?
so it's Oktagon.tv, and if you're on an English IP, it'll jump you straight to the English front page. So it's all easy to do. It's like their Fight Pass. They got some great shows on there, like Dracula Fight Night, SSC, other shows that you can kind of dig into if you want to subscribe to that and watch other fights from that sort of area. But then the pay-per-views, I think they come in at about £8 or £9 English to watch the events.
I remember they were reasonable because
Yeah.
I don't pay normally more than a tenner to watch
So how do you
pay-per-view.
watch all these UFC stuff, Katie? How do you do that?
I've got BT Sport, haven't I?
Okay,
So
all right, joking, jokes. I'm not trying to get you arrested. Let's go.
this is rude, Kev. There's more chance of Lee walking through the door with a gin and tonic rather than a tea. It would be a glass of wine, Kev, but
Come on,
the
Kev O'Connell.
sentiment's the same.
Come on, Kev.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Bryan. Really excited for the next show. And really, when's the next YouTube show out?
So that will come out this Wednesday. So episode 1 is already there. We talked to Carlos Ramola and Pavel Neruda. So that's up on the Oktagon UK and Ireland channel. And the second episode will drop on Wednesday. So yeah, subscribe to it, check it out, and see if you fancy a little bit of Oktagon in your life.
I'm going to put the link to the first show in the comments to this video interview on Facebook so everyone can see it there. But tune in, guys. It's going to be awesome.
All right, have a happy Sunday, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much, Bryan.